and welcome back to the Citizen channel. I hope you're all staying safe and well as we head into the World Cup break. Yes, we've done a player of the season. Well, player of the season so far, of course. We're going to look at the 22-23 City player of the season so far. Yes, we played 21 games, just slightly over a third of hopefully what we will be playing if we get to the final or near the final stages of the competitions, etc., etc. So it could be a lot more than a third, couldn't it, depending on how we go on. So we're going to have a look just how the players have coped. And we've ended up with 17 players that are qualified. And there'll be some honourable mentions, of course, for guys who didn't quite qualify for it. So what I've done, I've took the player ratings that I give every game this season and the Manchester Evening News, which has mainly been Simon Bukowski. Tyrone Marshall's kicked in with some as well, but I'll just class it as the Manchester Evening News ratings and make a comparison. Yeah, there are some discrepancies, but overall I think the top five is more or less near enough between us, so there's not a lot of difference between us. So we're going to have a look at that today, please. This is part one. There will be a part two, so please make sure after watching this, part two will be available very quickly after it, probably a couple of days after it. So depending when you're watching this, it might be there already. You can watch them both in one go. Right, please, if you're new to the channel, please push that subscribe button, push the bell notifications so these vlogs are coming out and do everything City past, present and forever, of course. It'd be great to have you on board. It'd be great to have your comments, what you think about these player ratings, your own player ratings, if you've done them. Some people do. Let me know what you think and give us a thumbs up, guys. Great. Good to get views. Nice to get a thumbs up as well. Right, we played 14 Premier League games, played 6 UEFA Champions League games and just the one Carabao Cup game, a total of 21 games. No one City players featured in all 21. The most played, and interesting, we'll have more on this in a moment, very interesting. The most played is Cancelo, who started all 14 Premier League and started 5 Champions League games and was a late sub in the other. And the only game he didn't feature in was the Carabao Cup, of course, which he was banned for. So would he have played in that? Probably. So Pep would have featured him in every game if he had the chance. To qualify for this, you've needed to play at least 7. So a third of the game. So it's not a lot, but obviously even that discounts certain players. So at least 7 games had to be played. Right, so who didn't qualify first of all? Let's just have the honourable mentions. Joshua Wilson-Esbrand, of course, had a couple of mid-second half sub-appearances in the Champions League. Calvin Phillips came on in the 89th minute for match day 1 against West Ham and 2 appearances as sub in the Champions League and back in September, and of course came on as sub in the Carabao Cup game against Chelsea. So these are just mentions because they don't qualify. Cole Palmer made 7 sub appearances in the Premier League, 3 sub appearances in the Champions League, and a start against Sevilla in the final match day, of course, of the Champions League, that 3-1 win. He also started the Carabao Cup game. And if you look at his ratings, the Manchester Evening News average was 6.5, mine was 6, so he was fine for those those little ample of games. Rico Lewis made 2 Premier League sub-appearances, 1 sub-appearance plus 1 start in the Champions League, the final game with Sevilla, and started the Carabao Cup game. So, yeah, not a lot to go at, but again, he averaged 7 from me in the Manchester Evening News as well. Ortega, a couple of Champions League starts, Carabao Cup start. Manchester Evening News give him a 7.3. That was quite good. So I give him a 7.16 average for the 3 games. Sergio Gomez, 5 sub-appearances in the Premier League, but started 4 of the 6 Champions League games, unusually. Manchester Evening News rating, 5.8. Not great. I give him a 6.1. Right, that's the honourable mentions. Here's the guys that all qualify. Now, not one of the 17 that I've picked actually scored below 6. That's very, very good. A very good rating. Last year, there was a few sort of under 6. And 4 scored a higher than an average of 7. So I didn't have anyone under 6, and I had 4 scored more than 7. The Manchester Evening News, 2 players got below the average of 6. A bit mean, Manchester Evening News. I thought I was mean, actually, but obviously not. And 5 got, so they had 1 extra. 5 got higher than a 7 average. Right, let's go. Let's go from 17 to 11, this part 1 of this player of the season so far. Number 17, will it surprise you? Probably not. Riyad Mahrez, yeah, rock bottom for not just me, Manchester Evening News as well. He started 3 Premier Leagues, 5 Champions League games, and 1 Carabao Cup, and he had 5 sub appearances spread around. And his average for me was 6.05, so he did get over 6, so that's okay, that's fine. And he only got 5.6 over the Manchester Evening News. His best performance, probably the 5-0 against Copenhagen when he scored a penalty. His worst performance was probably Dortmund away in the 0-0, yes, when he missed a penalty. So that sort of makes sense, doesn't it? And if you look at last year's player ratings for season 21-22, he was bottom. There was 15 qualified. He was 15 for 15. So Mahrez has had a pretty crap season and a bit so far, hasn't he, on my ratings anyway, and the Manchester Evening News by the looks of it. In at number 16, a bit of a surprise, yeah, Kyle Walker. Number 16. He's not played many, of course, and he just about qualified. He's number 15 in the M.E.N top 17. Started just as 7 Premier League games before his injury. He averaged 6.07 from me and just 6 from the Manchester Evening News. And his poorest games was against Newcastle away, Palace home, that 4-2 win, and Villa away as well, 1-1, which knocked down his average overall. So a little bit of a surprise for me. He finished 12th though last season, so it wasn't great. It was only 12 out of 15 last season. So he'll have to be happy with next to bottom this season, 16th, not very good. And 15th, and this is the big surprise. I sort of hinted at it earlier on. Pep started this bloke. You will know in virtually every game he could, and the only one he didn't was where he was banned, basically, or he didn't get a look in anyway. João Cancelo, 15. Yeah. But so did he really deserve to start all those games for Pep? Probably not, based on that. He's actually 16th on the Manchester Evening News rating, so he's next to bottom, and he's obviously a couple from the bottom on mine. So he's averaging 6.18 for me and 5.89 for the Manchester Evening News. So big surprise there, Cancelo, as I said, for the guy who's virtually played every game, if you like. Unbelievable. His best game was Southampton at home, way back when, a 4-0, when he chipped in with a goal and an assist and was man of the match, and we were all raving over him, weren't we? And his 2 worst performances, Fulham home, the 2-1 win, as you'd expect, where he was sent off, and of course Dortmund away in the 0-0 also was a poor game. Last season, well, I don't know where we get all this about Cancelo being a cracking player. He was 14 out of 15 last season, so he was rated 14th last season. So, yeah, I think we'll have to talk about Cancelo, Pep, I think, in the future. Right, at number 14, not really a big shock. Again, he wasn't that high last season. We've got Edison. He's 12th with the Manchester Evening News. He's 14th on my ratings. He started 18 of the 21 games in total, all the Premier League games and 4 Champions League games. My average is 6.3. The Evening News' average is 6.39. His standout game was a 1-0 win away at Leicester, which was at. Played very well, and his low point was probably the 4-2 home win over Crystal Palace. But even though he's 14th, his level of consistency is reasonable. He didn't have many stinkers. Let's put it that way. Last season he was 11 of 15. So yeah. I mean, pro rata-ish, he's round about the same spot. Unlucky for Son, number 13. Again, no surprise for me. And I had to double check this one because I got all my addings up wrong because he actually came in as number 2, but I thought that's not right. It can't be right. So I had to double check it and I got my adding up wrong. So yes, at number 13, no surprise for me because I think he's been having a pretty bang average season. Gundogan. But the good thing for Gundogan is he's actually number 7 in the Manchester Evening News. He's 13 for me and number 7. So a big discrepancy there between how I've seen him play and how the Manchester Evening News have seen him play. He's played 10 Premier League games, 5 Champions Leagues and 1 Carabao Cup. And he's been sub a couple of times, 1 each in the Premier League and the Champions League. His best performance Premier League, probably the Bournemouth home, 4-0, United to 6-3, and the best by far in the Champions League was the 5-0 at home to Copenhagen. Like others, though, he saved his worst for last with the 2-1 defeat by Brentford. Yeah, there's certainly 3 or 4 of the City players had the worst game against Brentford. Last season, yeah, I mean, he was 8th. He was just over halfway, just under halfway, 8 from 15. So it's quite a big drop for me. in, let's face it, what at this point in time is his last season. So, but I wasn't surprised. It didn't shock me. It did surprise me when he was number 2. I thought I had to I better check that. It doesn't sound right, but there you go. Right, number 12. Just a couple more to go for this part 1 for me, and 13 for the Manchester Evening News. So not a lot difference. Someone who was in my top 5 last season, and I think he was in the Manchester Evening News' top 5 as well. Jack Grealish, yes, number 12, Jack Grealish, and people think he's having a better season this season, but not according to my stats. He started 5 of the 6 Champions League games and come on as sub in the other, and started 6 Premier League games, of course, the Carabao Cup game. My average, though, still a good average. I mean, as I was saying, there's a lot of players have been sort of doing it this season, and say he's got a 6.5 average, which is fair enough for me. 6.3 for the Manchester Evening News, and his standout game in the Premier League was United at home, the 6-3, and he was equally impressive in the Champions League 5-0 home win against Copenhagen, and impressive in our only Carabao Cup game, of course, against Chelsea. Dortmund at home in a 2-1 win was perhaps his lowest or his worst, one of his worst, certainly according to my ratings, his worst performance. Last season, as I say, he was 5th of 15, so a bit of a drop-off for Jack Grealish as far as positions-wise, but as I said, 6.5 average score isn't that bad, but I say he's competing with a lot higher, obviously. And at number 11, to finish off part 1, before we'll do the top 10 in part 2. Number 11, we got Rodri. Yeah, he was in the top 10 with the Manchester Evening News at number 8, so a little bit of a discrepancy there. He started 13 Premier League games, 4 Champions League games, and just 1 Carabao Cup game. And my average for him, again, as with Grealish, but he actually played more games, so I've actually put him above Grealish. 6.5 average with a 6.61 for the Manchester Evening News. Bournemouth home 4-0 and the Saints home 4-0 were possibly his best performances. And no real poor games, but possibly his weakest was Villa away, the 1-1, and Dortmund away, the 0-0, were probably his weaker performances. Last season, yes, he was certainly in the top 10 last season. He was 7, so just above halfway last season. It was 7 out of 15. So despite some consistencies, he's sort of still a little bit down the table. So there you go. That's my 17 to 11. Obviously, there's 10 to go. 17 spot was Mahrez, 16 was Walker, 15 was Cancelo, 14 Ederson, 13 Gundogan, 12 Grealish, and 11 Rodri. Please join me in part 2 where we'll check out 10 to number 1. Is there any surprises? Well, there's 1 or 2. Yeah, there is 1 or 2. Certainly Gundogan isn't number 2, that's for sure. I did have to double check that one. So join me in part 2. Let me know your thoughts, guys. Let me know what you think of this part 1. And as I said, depending when you're watching this, part 2 might already be available. Otherwise, you're watching this as soon as it's come out. Just you wait about 48 hours for part 2 to come out. But hope you enjoyed it anyway. Let us know your comments, guys. Thanks for watching. Till we meet again, and that's one thing, don't I? Please stay safe, Blues. Come on, City. Bye for now.